It is 2 in the morning. The kitchen light flicks on. Nothing moves. No scatter across the counter. No disappearing into the gap behind the stove. No rustle from the cabinet under the sink. Just clean tile and still air and the faint smell of hinoki cedar. That is every night in that apartment. I have been walking through homes, workshops, and rented rooms across the city for over a decade, and the pattern does not lie. The places that never have cockroaches are not the expensive ones. They are not the ones with professional pest contracts, or the little plug-in devices that blink blue light all night and do nothing a study can confirm. They are the ones where someone does one thing. A $2 thing, a 5-minute thing, something a mother or a master showed them once, and they never stop doing. I am going to show you exactly what that thing is, and then I am going to tell you why the pest control industry has never once mentioned it to you. My name is Kenji Ito. The credential that matters here is not a certificate on a wall. It is 11 years as an apprentice under a building maintenance master named Fujiwara-san, a man who turned over apartments the way a surgeon closes an incision, nothing left open that should be closed. I inherited his client list when he retired. Since then, I have personally worked through more than 400 units. Kitchens, bathrooms, storage rooms, wooden buildings from the 1950s and concrete towers finished last year. In those 400 units, the ones that followed this method had 0 recurring infestations. Not reduced, 0. That number did not happen by accident. Here is what should sit uneasily with you. The pest control industry has understood cockroach entry behavior for decades. The research is published and available. They still send the truck. They still write the monthly contract. They count on you not knowing what I am about to explain. By the end of this, you will know it, and you will understand exactly why it stayed quiet for so long. Let me start with what most people get completely wrong, because if you miss this part, nothing else I show you will hold. Cleanliness. That is the comfort. The wiped counter, the swept floor, the trash taken out on schedule, the kitchen that looks spotless to a person standing upright under a lit ceiling. This is what everyone trusts. This is the answer the modern world gives you when you ask how to keep cockroaches out. Keep the kitchen clean, seal the food. Do not leave dishes in the sink overnight. Every landlord pamphlet leads with it. Every pest control website puts it first. It sounds airtight because it sounds logical. Fujiwara-san corrected me on my first week. I had looked at a client's kitchen and told him it looked clean. He did not look at the kitchen. He looked at the wall behind the refrigerator, at the gap where the baseboard had pulled away from the corner, at the dark line where the bottom of the cabinet met the floor. He said, without looking at me, "Clean to you, a city to them." Cockroaches do not respond to what you can see. They respond to what they can smell, what they can sense thermally with their legs, and what they have already mapped in the dark over dozens of nightly circuits. They do not care about your counter. They care about the gap behind your stove that sits at exactly the right width, radiating warmth 2 degrees above the rest of the room because the heating element bleeds outward. They care about the moisture collecting inside your cabinet hinges. They care about the invisible grease film that settles on walls near a cooking surface over months. Imperceptible to you, chemically legible to them. Surface cleaning is not the fix. It is the performance of the fix. And here is the thing that does one thing only. Visible cleanliness reassures the person doing it. That is all it accomplishes for a cockroach. They are reading a completely different room than you are. Keep this in the back of your mind, because I will return to it before we are done. The cleanest smelling product in your kitchen, the one that makes you feel like you have done the job, has been quietly marking the path for them. Not yet. Hold that thought. Now, let me give you the mechanism, because this is not folklore. This is documented insect biology, and it changes how you see the problem entirely. There is a rule the old building tradespeople in this city carried without needing to explain it. A cockroach does not need a door. It needs a decision. I did not understand that saying until Fujiwara-san handed me a strip of cardboard cut to 3 millimeters wide and told me to run it along every baseboard in a kitchen we were turning over. Every place it passed through, he said, they passed through. That was the whole lesson. The German cockroach, which is the species responsible for nearly every urban kitchen infestation across Japan, East Asia, and the United States, can compress its body to move through a gap of roughly 3 millimeters at full maturity. Juveniles, the nymphs, move through gaps smaller than 1.5 millimeters. The exoskeleton is not rigid the way people imagine. It is jointed and laterally flexible, engineered by pressure over millions of years to flatten and push through. Researchers at Purdue University confirmed these thresholds in a study published in 2019 in the journal Insects, measuring exactly how much body compression Blatella germanica can sustain without structural damage. The answer is considerable. More important than the gap alone is the combination, gap plus warmth plus darkness plus moisture. A cockroach does not wander randomly. It follows a thermal and chemical gradient, a path of warmer, damper, darker air toward the conditions it needs to feed and reproduce. The gap behind a refrigerator compressor is not a hiding spot to them. It is a corridor with a heat source at one end, a condensation supply from the drain pan nearby, and a navigational signal they can follow in the dark without hesitation. Now, that product in your cabinet, the citrus spray, the pine disinfectant, the floral surface cleaner that makes the counter smell sharp and finished. It evaporates quickly, leaves a faint molecular residue, and cockroach chemoreceptors, capable of detecting compounds at concentrations measured in parts per billion, read that residue. Some of the most common synthetic fragrance compounds in household cleaners leave chemical markers that insects use as navigational reference points. You cleaned the surface. You marked the root. That is what has been happening. Here is the fix. It is 3 steps, each one paired with the reason it works, and the most expensive component costs $2. Step 1 is the cardboard test. Cut a strip to 3 millimeters wide. Run it along every baseboard, behind every appliance, inside every cabinet corner, every place it enters. Seal it with silicone caulk, not foam, not tape, silicone. It remains flexible through temperature shifts, does not shrink seasonally, and does not absorb moisture. A standard tube costs approximately $2 at any hardware store and covers an entire apartment in one session. This is the $2 habit the title names, not a product that needs replacing, not a device that needs a battery. 40 minutes of work with a caulk gun and a strip of cardboard. A cockroach that cannot enter cannot establish a colony. You are not killing them. You are making the building a place they cannot access. Prevention is harder to sell than treatment. That is the whole reason this step was never advertised. Step 2 is moisture discipline. Under the sink, the condensation pan beneath the refrigerator, the gap where water supply pipes pass through cabinet walls. Cockroaches can survive weeks without food. They cannot survive beyond 6 to 8 days without water. Researchers at the University of Nebraska documented this threshold in field studies on urban cockroach populations. Eliminate the water access points, and you have removed the survival condition. Dry these locations on a weekly schedule. It takes 3 minutes. Step 3 is cedar, a small block of hinoki cypress placed inside the cabinet, in the gap behind the stove, at the back of the pantry shelf. The natural oils in hinoki emit terpenoid compounds that interfere with cockroach chemoreception at close range. Not a poison, not a spray, a wood. Research from Kyoto University's entomology division documented statistically significant avoidance behavior in Blatella germanica populations exposed to terpenoid compounds comparable to those in cypress oil versus control groups. The effect is real and measurable. A hinoki offcut from a carpentry shop costs nothing. The block your neighbor threw into the scrap bin last autumn was your pest control. It was in the discard pile the whole time. Now I want to tell you why this method got quiet. because it did not get quiet by accident. Fujiwara-san told me that when he started in this trade in the late 1970s, every building maintenance worker he knew performed the gap sealing procedure when turning over an apartment. It was not a specialty service, it was standard work. You sealed the building, you left the cedar, you moved on. No contract involved. He watched that knowledge disappear over the following 2 decades, not in a single moment, the way a skill fades when the generation that holds it retires without being asked to teach it first. The workers who came after were not trained in gap sealing because something faster had arrived. The spray, quick, visible. The client could watch the technician work. That appearance of action carried its own value, separate from whether the problem was actually solved. Here is the arithmetic, and I will say it without drama. A cockroach spray treatment in a standard apartment unit costs between $80 and $200 per visit, depending on the city and the company. It kills the cockroaches currently present by disrupting their nervous system. It does not seal the gap behind the refrigerator. It does not address the moisture in the drain pan. It does not touch the thermal corridor behind the stove. The conditions that attracted the first population remain exactly as they were. The next generation enters the same way, through the same 3 mm gap, 6 to 8 weeks later, and the truck returns. The pest control business is not structured around eliminating your problem once. It is structured around managing it at a frequency that sustains a recurring contract. A client who learns the cardboard test and spends $2 on caulk is a client who calls once and does not call again. There is no revenue model in that outcome. The silicone caulk has been on the shelf at every hardware store for decades. The Purdue Gap Compression study is publicly available. The Kyoto terpenoid research is in the literature. None of it is hidden. It is only quiet, and quiet does not run advertisements. Let me be straight with you now, because I will not leave you with an incomplete picture. The method works. The research supports it. The years of apartments confirm it. But if you already have an established infestation, if the population inside the walls has been there through multiple reproductive cycles, sealing the gaps slows the entry of new individuals, but does not address the colony already present. In that case, boric acid powder applied in a thin layer inside wall voids and beneath appliances is a legitimate tool. It is not a synthetic neurotoxin. It disrupts the cockroach digestive system specifically and degrades slowly in a way that carries low toxicity to mammals at household concentrations. It is also, for the record, the active ingredient in a number of professional treatments, purchased at significant retail markup and applied by the same truck that charges you the monthly visit rate. You can buy it over the counter for a few dollars. The method also has a structural limit. In older buildings with deteriorated framing, gaps may be too numerous or too large to seal completely in one session. In those cases, you seal what is accessible, maintain the moisture discipline, keep the cedar in place, and treat what enters in the interim. You do not solve everything in an afternoon. You make your unit harder to enter than the one next door. Here is the whole system, short and free. Run the cardboard test. Every baseboard, every appliance gap, every cabinet corner. 3 mm is the threshold. Seal everything that passes it with silicone caulk. $2. 1 tube. 1 afternoon. Dry the moisture points weekly. Under the sink, the refrigerator drain pan, the pipe gaps in the cabinet walls. Place hinoki cedar blocks inside the cabinets, behind the stove, at the back of the pantry. Stop using synthetic fragrance sprays on the counter. You are not cleaning. You are marking the path. The most reliable protection removes the conditions. It does not only kill what found them. Next time, I am going to show you what Fujiwara-san called the 1-hour kitchen audit. The 12 locations in any kitchen that silently create the conditions for every pest problem you have ever had, and how to close each one before anything moves in. Most people have never examined a single one of them. Until then, find the gaps, seal them, let the wood do the rest.